My heroic anthem KvK with 1568 Omniarch's Kingdom has come to an end. The KvK is officially over and the winners plus peace agreements have also been decided. So today I'm going to give you a KvK recap. I'm going to tell you all the stats for every single kingdom. I'm going to tell you my stats, which marches for me did the best, and I'm going to finally tell you how did all of the drama go down. Is this still drama? Is the drama now solved? So if you're interested in my current KvK, if you're interested in how we ended up losing or why I think we ended up losing, and if you're interested in just my personal stats and performance, you want to stick around till the end of the video. Now let's just start off with a KvK recap today, a recap of how the KvK went. And the first thing is, well, the allies. I've mentioned these before. I'm in Earth Camp, we are allied with Fire Camp, and we are against Water Camp, and mainly my kingdom was fighting with Wind Camp. Then we'll just go over the KvK in just a small short review. We'll start off with the Zone 5. I mean, we lost this zone, I want to say in the first 2 or 3 days. It was a pretty tough fight. We did do a lot of territory rebuilding. A lot of our forts ended up getting rebuilt. But in the end, TL68, mainly 1568, I want to say, outnumbered us. And especially when 2332 was in downtime, we couldn't really hold off both kingdoms, 1568 and 2098. So it ended up with us just slowly losing territory over here. It wasn't like a fast loss. It's not like we lost all our territory in an hour or anything. But we were losing a lot of territory over time. We would lose like maybe 5 or 6 flags, less territory each day. And eventually we just got pushed way too far past the sanctuary. So it just became like, oh, there's no point fighting in this zone anymore. We're not going to really be able to push them forward. And it's just wasting all of our resources. So that's what we ended up doing. We ended up giving up this zone. Since we didn't care too much about it, we were mainly just filling with farms and stuff. But our main goal was just to drain them, and we think we did that pretty well. I'm pretty sure our trades were fairly decent from what I've seen. Of course, you're not going to win every trade, but I've seen a lot of really great reports for this zone. So we weren't doing any flag swarming or anything in Zone 5, and it wasn't really an important zone to us. As for our allies over in Fire Camp against Water Camp, this is really simple with the way their zone went. They took complete control of the zone within the first 2 or so days. Like, they had all the stuff taken down to the sanctuary. And if you look at where my cursor is, they probably had territory about up to here. And then they just couldn't push out the last little resistance for the first like week or even week and a half. And the fighting just kept on going. So that was just almost like that was probably the biggest stalemate I've ever seen in a Zone 5 that lasted multiple days. That's how crazy it was. So that ended up finishing off maybe a week and a half later when Water Camp ended up just saying, this is a waste of our time, we're going to give up on the territory, and ended up focusing more in on their Zone 6 here. So that was really how that went. Massive stalemate. I mean, it was days of fighting and just constant people using up troops and draining their resources. And I saw some really poor trade reports from the side of our allies. So that is definitely something that maybe ended up leading to them becoming very drained. I mean, we saw their accounts in Kingsland towards the end. They had no troops left. I mean, props to our allies. They completely zeroed themselves. But I also did see some weird rally combos here, like Justinian, Nevsky's. I also saw a lot of Tariq rallies that are very outdated. So I'm not sure why we saw such, I want to say, weak rallies, but I'm sure they might have had their reasons. So that's probably a reason why it was very stalemated. The rallies they were using in garrisons were not the very best, but they had very good open field control. I mean, the whole of Fire Camp was constantly just controlling the field. Rarely did they lose field control in their Zone 5, so that's definitely what helped them just win within the first couple of days, as they just blitzed through all the flags and just went straight to the sanctuary. Now, as for Pass 7, I'm going to skip over the Dark Altars. I mean, no one really cares about those. But as for Pass 7, I mean, this was a very back and forth thing besides with our allies. They pretty much controlled the pass the majority of the time, but eventually, I think 1256 and just Water Camp in general ended up taking the pass off Fire Camp, but no one's forts were really burned here. I think eventually our allies in Fire Camp ended up burning one of Water Camp's forts, which was located here, but that was really just as far as it went. As for our Pass 7, same story. I mean, we tried to burn 1568's fort and 2098's fort, just wasn't really working. They tried to burn ours, once again, wasn't really working. So what ended up happening was we just ended up controlling the pass. I want to say the majority of the time, we ended up burning one fort here that was literally useless. I mean, it was just to stop us from flagging right there. So in the end, that was just a, once again, massive stalemate. No one really gained any ground out of this pass, and nothing really happened until we go to Kingsland, and this is where I want to say a 4-day fight, a 3-day fight really took place, and this is probably one of the bigger fights, actually probably the biggest fight in the KvK, because what ended up happening was in the first couple, I want to say hours, I wasn't online for it, but this is what I've heard happened. Our kingdom and also our allies in 2332 built extremely defensively, went for more of a defensive build, because our goal was to let our allies over here just wipe out our enemies down in water camp, so fire camp destroys water camp, and they just come and support us. That is what the goal was. Didn't end up doing that. So what happened in the first, I want to say, day or so, our allies in fire camp once again came right down and actually took water camp's level 8 pass. I mean, they had control of their Kingsland pass. It looked like this KvK was going to be done and decided once fire camp had kicked out water camp. But what ended up happening was water camp just kept fighting and then no one could burn them out. So our allies ended up not being able to burn them out and they got super drained on troops and then they just couldn't fill their flags. In the end, they had to fill with stuff like siege, and you can see a report or so here where they were just like the end of Kingsland. They had no troops left and their flags were just being pumped full of whatever they could get. I mean, there were just people pumping siege in here, T2, T1. Just if you could get troops in there, you put troops in there because they were just completely drained. So that's how this ended up happening. Our allies just became completely drained, and despite them pushing on all angles, I mean, they had the pass, they even started pushing against 2098 and 1568 a bit early, they just couldn't really hold it off, and eventually they ran out of troops. The same case, I want to say, is pretty evident for us. Us in 1534, what happened was whenever it was 2332's downtime, we couldn't really do any pushing and it was just defense, and usually when 2332 was in downtime, we were also somewhat in downtime, so we were just getting burnt a lot. And a lot of the time when I was online, because I'm always online during night shift, which is what we call our downtime, we were losing a lot of ground as well. So we could usually make up most of the ground, but we were losing like a flag worth of territory each day that we couldn't get back. And eventually it's like, well, we can't really be fighting anymore because we're losing too much territory. There's no point. Can't even get all the cities in. And the same for 2332. They started losing way too much territory, and they were maybe losing like 3-4 flags worth of territory a day, which doesn't sound like a lot. But when you're looking at Kingsland, I think it would take around 20 flags to reach the actual ziggurat. So 4 flags or so is a lot of flags to be losing worth of territory. And eventually it was just like, our allies are drained, we're drained, Kingsland's pretty much over. We could fight for another 2 days maybe and hold our spot in Kingsland, but we would never reach the zig. So we ended up coming to a surrender with our enemies. As for kingdom-wide stats, I've got them up on the screen right now. This is the past 8 stats. I don't think I have the whole entire KvK stats. And I want to say that these were pretty good stats from both 1568, 1534, and then all the other kingdoms did pretty damn good as well. When you look at 1568, I think I would say they had the highest overall stats. You mainly care about power change and kill points. They had 691 billion kill points and then 2.4 billion power loss, which equated to about 333 million troops killed. So that's definitely a very, very high amount of kill points that troops that they've lost, and the kill points they gained was actually about 76 billion, not 691 billion. That would be ridiculous. So they gained 76 billion kill points, which is definitely a very solid number. As for our kingdom, I think we were second place in terms of the stats. We lost 332 million troops, which is almost identical to that of 1568, and we had around 67.4 million kill points. I want to say the reason our kill points are lower, it's not necessarily we have weaker marches or anything, it's just we were so outnumbered on the field. Then 1568's allies, 2098, they had around 316 million deads and also around 61 billion kill points. And then over in Fire Camp, our other allies, 2139, a very formidable kingdom, they had around 424 million deads. That's easily the highest in the KvK by like an absolute mile. And they also gained around 59 million kill points. I think that comes down to their, I want to say, weaker rally choices, which definitely led to them getting a lot more deads than maybe they needed. So now, as for my own personal stats, I had a goal of 400 million kill points. I say that every KvK, I haven't reached it on a single KvK. And also in terms of deads, I had a goal of 1 million or more. Whatever happened first, I didn't care that much. We'll talk about deads. I mean, I hit the dead goal. This wasn't actually intentional. I actually struggled to hit the million, because if you look at how many troops I have left, it's actually like a laughing stock. I have got 31,000 infantry, which is pretty much nothing, and I've got 100,000 cavalry. We weren't on the offensive most of the time when I was online, so I didn't really get chances to kill my archers. I had a few options, that's why you see there are some archer deads, but most of the time we were on the defense when I was online, so I was just pumping garrisons full of infantry and full of cavs, and that's why they're the majority of my deads, including the T5. I think I've got more T5 archer deads just because I had a lot of extra T5 archers I was willing to kill off up to like 80, 90,000. I only killed off 60,000, and my T4 archer deads were pretty low. This would probably come from swarming a flag or two, joining a rally or two, but I didn't feel that much with my T4 because I would have literally not enough troops to open field since I was already pretty tight once Kingsland had started on the archer troops that I did have. As for my kill points goal, like usual, I failed to reach it, so I think next time I'm going to be a little bit more reasonable. And I think there's two reasons I failed. First of all, I didn't play as much as I thought I would. I was actually pretty busy with a few other projects for another channel that I also run. But also, there was another thing that kind of stopped me, and that was resources. I started running quite low on resources. You can see I've got maybe enough to get, I want to say, 60 million kill points at the max. And these resources were just getting absolutely burnt through, especially when it was our downtime, when I was online. So it was very, I want to say, demoralizing to go out on the open field, get a trade where I go 10-1, which is horrible, and then go back to my city with a full hospital. So I didn't really enjoy that, very demoralizing, and it wasn't that fun, especially during the night shift, so I didn't fight as much. But I mean, I burnt through most of the resources besides stone. I just have a ridiculous amount of stone left. But wood is what I would have ended up running out of, and then I would have just been not able to fight. So once that wood was gone, I'd have to go into pick one chest, and I'd rather spend these on gold. So mainly, I would have maybe gotten another 80 million kill points, which would have left me with around 280 million. That would have been a pretty decent amount, but we only got around 200 million. I think it's a little bit less, maybe a little bit more. I'm not too sure what I started with. But I think overall, I'm kind of happy with the kill points I gained. In terms of the actual kills, we can look at them real quick. I have got, I think it's around 11 to 12, 11.1 million kills, which is a little bit lower than my previous KvK. I think our previous KvK, the trades were a little bit better as well. But we can see my previous KvK, where is the button? Here it is. I got around 12.4 million kills, but granted I was doing a lot of 1v1s towards the end just to win the Shobani Pal in the Mightiest Governor. So that's, I would say, maybe closer to 10 million kills, and then 2 million were from 1v1s for the MGE. So that doesn't really count as 12, I'd say it's more of a 10 million, and I healed 11 million. I don't know how many I've healed this KvK because it just doesn't tell me. So I think my kills, they are kind of lackluster, but my trades were very horrible, especially towards the end of Kingsland, which is where I would say I was pretty active. I was active towards the start. I wasn't as active on the second day, and I was very active on the last day, but that's the day that we ended up losing. So I was getting fairly poor trades and a lot of rally swarming that wasn't very good for me since I'm not a whale, and I probably shouldn't have been doing it, but it was pretty fun. So overall, I think even though I was getting very poor trades, it was kind of fun to do, and I did still enjoy it. As for the best marches that I was running, everyone always asks me this, which march traded the best? And I want to say the one that traded the best is easily Zulang with Herman, but that's to be expected. It's got my best gear, it's got the T5 troops, it's double expertise, it's even got my best armaments. It's of course going to trade the best out of my 3 marches. The march that did really surprise me though was Boudica with a Shobani Pal. This thing was putting in some pretty good work, even though sometimes it was caught out in a situation, it was kind of a 1v1. Boudica would just deal crazy damage, and then it would boost the Shobani Pal and he'd go nuts. And even when it was on the open field, even though his AoE is not absolutely meta breaking, it's only the same level as Nebuchadnezzar's, and he's a very old commander, and Shobani Pal's other damage and his fairly decent stats throughout his kit is more than enough to kind of get him going on the open field, and it will make him trade pretty damn good. So we'll notice that, I noticed that Shobani Pal definitely traded probably the shockingly best, and Henry YSG, I would say it traded the worst. A lot of the times, especially during our downtime, Henry would kind of swing into the enemy murderable and then just get absolutely wrecked. And I would say Henry YSG is going to be my weaker march, since they're both commanders on the chopping block for when the new commanders do come out for archers, whenever that may be. They're probably the first that will get replaced, and I think YSG is that commander that will be replaced, just because yes, YSG's damage is great, but I can't really get the cycle out of him without him taking too much damage, and he's missing a lot of stats like March Speed and stuff like that. And Henry is a very strong commander, don't get me wrong, but he's also not as overpowered as some of the other commanders I have. I mean, a Shobani Pal, Zulang, Herman, all these other commanders are just much stronger, including Boudica. So I'd say they did the worst out of my marchers, but they had their uses and they did pretty good. Cyrus though, he didn't get much use this KvK. A little bit of messing around, I did use him out of city popping, but that was pretty much it. So I want to say that my best march was definitely Zulang Herman, and my second best was easily Boudica Shobani Pal, but sometimes this march was actually doing better than my Zulang with my Herman, which definitely says a lot about, I want to say, the strength of a Shobani Pal more than the other 2 commanders. So now the final thing I would like to talk about is, what about the drama this KvK? How did it go? Because I made the first video and I said massive drama, betrayal in Kingsland, blah blah blah, and I was pretty much berating 1568, and at the time, I think both sides felt betrayed by each other, and I don't know the full extent of the drama still, but I'm gonna say fairly confidently the drama is pretty much over, except Carl. Carl and I still absolutely hate each other, but besides that, I want to say that the drama in 1568 and the drama between 1534 is pretty much settled. Our king had a chat with their king and they were like, you betrayed us and this is how we felt about it and you read the stats wrong. And then their king was like, oh crap, we did, that wasn't a very good idea, and they both apologized to each other. It went something along those lines, I'm pretty sure, and then the drama was pretty much settled. So hopefully I don't reignite it by saying what I just said if I said something wrong, but that being said, I'm pretty sure the drama is just over now. There is no more hostility between 1568 and also 1534, which means that if there is a future in where we're in the same KvK as 1568, maybe we end up allied with them and then we just destroy that KvK. So that's also certainly possible, and it is pretty good to know that the drama between both the kingdoms is now over, and that means I can zero Omniarch with both sides' approval. Now, if you enjoyed today's KvK recap, I want to tell you guys that I also have a Discord server where I talk a lot more about my KvKs, commanders, equipment, whatever it may be, a little bit more in depth. So if you have real questions to ask me about your account, if you have stuff you want to know about the game, or maybe you want to send me screenshots about things, my Discord server is easily the best place to do it, and there are other people, if I'm not online, who might be able to help you. I think we have close to something like 700 members on the Discord, which is very insane, 688 to be exact. So everybody come on down to the Discord if you enjoyed today's video, because it will definitely be a nice place for you to hang out, chat with people, see some pictures of my account, see pictures of your account maybe, ask for advice, whatever it may be. It is a great place. The link will be in the pinned comment and also in the description. Now I just want to say thank you all for watching and I hope to see you in the next one.